Hello. Hello. How are you people? Waiting for you to join in today and waiting for my host, for my guest, Dr. Nadler. Hi, Nisreen. Hello, hello, hello. Ya hala. Long time. So, Dr. Nadler, we're waiting for you. Hi, Hanan. How are you guys? Hi, Crystal. Hello, Wissam. Hi, Grace. Hi, Relly. Relly. Hi, George. Hi, Madonna. We have a very interesting topic for you today. Hey.
Hello.
Hi,
How are
Relly.
you? Hi.
Hi. How are you?
I'm good. Good to see you.
We're waiting for people to log in,
Okay.
and we're very excited to have you with us. Thank you for waking up early.
Yes. It was not too bad. Not too bad. A little
Not
earlier
too
than
bad.
normal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So today we're going to be talking with Relly about emotional intelligence in these times, in the times of the pandemic, COVID-19. And but before I start with the conversation, I would like to introduce to you my friend and my partner and a very wonderful coach, Dr. Relly Nadler. To all of us, Dr. Relly. And Dr. Nadler is a Psych D and an MCC coach. He is the founder of True North Leadership, Inc., an executive and organizational development firm. He was educated as a clinical psychologist and has become a world-class executive coach, leadership and corporate training, and is certified by MHS to administer, interpret, and certify other trainers in the prestigious EQ 2.0. He has designed and delivered many multiple day leadership boot camps for high achievers. As a licensed psychologist and a master executive coach, Dr. Nadler has been working for more than 30 years with top executives and their teams to become star performers. He is the author of 5 best-selling leadership and team performance books and is a sought-after speaker and consultant on leadership, team building, executive coaching, emotional intelligence, and experiential learning. Dr. Nadler has coached CEOs, presidents, and their staffs, and has developed and delivered innovative leadership programs for many organizations like Anheuser-Busch, Baxter Healthcare, BMW, EDS, MCI, Shield Healthcare, and the list goes on and on and on. He is recognized around the world for his expertise in linking emotional intelligence and experiential learning and to business objectives. Dr. Nadler received his BA from the University of Hartford and his MA in psychology at the University of California, Santa Barbara. And as I said, he's a Psych D in counseling psychology from University of Northern Colorado. He is faculty with myself at the College of Executive Coaching, a postgraduate institute that trains professionals in personal and executive coaching. And he is certified in Daniel Goleman's and Hay Group's emotional competency inventory. In his most recent book, Leading with Emotional Intelligence, Dr. Nadler provides a hands-on curriculum to develop emotional intelligence in leaders and their team. And I can go on and on and on and on. And Dr. Nadler. Dr. Nadler is actually also my mentor, my teacher, and sometimes my coach. all of the time my coach, and a very dear friend and a partner. We work together in vital signs, vital skills in the United States, and we deal with a lot of healthcare burnt out issues, but that is very common nowadays. And many, many other projects that we do together. He has a book coming out soon with another dear colleague of ours and Dr. Kathy Greenberg. So watch out for the book. It's coming out when, Relly?
It'll be coming out in June, and it's called Emotional Brilliance.
Emotional
Can you hear me
Brilliance,
okay?
yes.
Yeah.
Yes, we can hear you well. So,
Okay, good.
and today he gave us his time to be working with emotional intelligence leadership in these times. So, Relly, what would you like to start off with today in terms of emotional intelligence and how important it is in these times? And I have to remind all of you that you can post your questions. We will try as much as possible to answer all of your questions today. Go ahead, Relly.
Okay, good. Well, just so you know, every once in a while, can you hear me? Just so you know, every once in a while it gets a little paused. So if there may be a little delay, you know. So let me say a few things. Thanks for Zeina for doing this. I know our friendship and partnership has been very special for me, and you're very special. And I'm glad we got a chance to kind of help and support what you're doing with your folks on Instagram Live. So this is the first time I've done Instagram Live. I've done a ton of Zooms and other things, but first time. So I'm trying to make sure I can kind of get myself in in the picture well. So so as you said, Zeina, this is an incredible time for people to use their leadership, whether it's in their organization or with their family, because of the heightened threat for everybody. And one of the things that we talk about, and you and I talk about, what goes on in the brain, and if there's a threat for the brain, it impacts people's thinking. And there's kind of, you know, three levels now these days of threat. I mean, one we've had before COVID was threat to the environment. As it gets a little closer, threat to the neighborhood, your family. And then the highest threat is threat to yourself and your immediate people, you know, with your family. So what happens, as you know, that part is in the amygdala part of the brain, and we get hyper vigilant. And I think it's only going to get worse, at least in the U.S. here, as we open up and are not everybody sheltered in. So once we're out, each person could be a carrier. I mean, that's where the brain could go. So there's going to be a lot of anxiety. You know, is that person as disciplined as I am about washing my hands, about wearing a mask? So that anxiety can get really heightened. And this is where I think for ourselves, emotional intelligence is so important. You know, one, to manage yourself, but two, how do you manage others? And it's almost with your family or with your coworkers, if you don't try to manage their emotions first, you're really not going to be able to connect with them. So maybe another way of saying that, Zeina, in, you know, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, everybody is at the bottom of the triangle. Physical safety, am I going to get my needs met? As a parent or as a leader, you have to enter there. You know, so tell me, from an empathy standpoint, how are you doing? What's going on with you? Is your family safe? What's happening? And so if you don't start there, you know, with emotions first, you're not going to be able to engage the rest of their brain.
Okay.
So I can go on.
So,
is there more questions that you want
to? What I'm hearing is basically we are all back to the first level of the hierarchy of Maslow, and our amygdala is in a state of trigger most of the times now, because of the anxiety, it's hitting, everything is hitting us, and all of these emotions.
Right.
So from an emotional intelligence standpoint, what are your suggestions that, since many people here are watching us, we have doctors, we have engineers, we have you name it, we have many people online with us today. So, and it's first of them with themselves, as we know, with emotional intelligence, it's managing, understanding ourselves and managing ourselves first, and understanding others and managing others second. And so, what are your recommendations in these times? Where is the place they can go to so they can start moving on with this crisis? Because in the States, you have a crisis. We have a double whammy here in Lebanon, as I have explained to you uh,
Right.
earlier in our discussions. So we are in a crisis that's a moving crisis, and it's going to be going on. So what are your thoughts?
Yeah. Well, I know from our conversation, Zeina, how much is going on for you in Lebanon, and how challenging these times are, so you already had incredibly challenging times, and then now you overlaid that, like you said, with COVID. So the first part, and maybe this is, I can go through a formula that we have in our upcoming book, Emotional Brilliance. And we've
That's
used,
great.
yeah, so we've used Dr. Kathy Greenberg and myself. It's going to be out, like we said, in June, and people will have a chance. It'll first come out in an ebook, and we'll let you know. But in Emotional Brilliance, first of all, what is emotional brilliance? Is we know emotional intelligence, and emotional brilliance is what emotions, values, behaviors do you choose for a specific situation. And so one of the analogies, you'll appreciate this, is you have a bunch of clothes in your closet, and you're going to make a presentation, and which clothes or which outfit do you pick specifically for that situation? So kind of bringing that back, your closet is all your strengths, your emotional intelligence competencies, your strengths, find your strengths. Which ones do you pick that are the best ones that will help you in this situation experience to have? And so we've been talking about this idea of that's your go-to emotion. In a challenge, what's your go-to? And you and I have talked about this. So at this point, for many people, hopefully it's going to be compassion. And
Okay.
for everybody, it's going to be a little different, and I would ask your audience to think about, okay, what's my go-to? At this time, it may be compassion. It may be, like for me, one of my go-tos is curiosity. And so how can I
Mhm.
really be with someone, ask questions? My curiosity leads me to empathy. And I think at this time of COVID, that's what we need to start with: empathy, start with compassion to connect with someone else. So I like to say you have to connect before you direct. And so the direct may be in your organization, you're directing someone, maybe in your family. You have to connect. And how do you connect? And Zeina, you know this, as well as anybody does. It's from this heartfelt place. And so you have to ask them from an empathy standpoint, how are you doing? What are you feeling? What's going on for you? Tell me a little bit about that. So the first step in our emotional brilliance, we use this acronym NAME. And so the N is notice and name the emotion. So you could do this for yourself, and you have to kind of think about, okay, so what am I experiencing? When you name it, it takes a little bit of the unknown mystery, maybe some of the amygdala activation, because to name emotion is a prefrontal cortex question. To
Yes.
experience it is kind of in your amygdala, in your emotional network. To name it and actually think about, am I angry? Am I resentful? Am I spiteful? All those are thinking questions. Yes, you're trying to name an emotion, but that lessens the emotion. So I'll go through it and then I'll stop, just with the initials. So the N is is notice, name. The A is accept. The M is manage your thoughts, manage your actions. And E is express it.
So we have the name. Let's repeat it for people.
Okay.
So
Yep.
N is notice that emotion.
Notice and name. Yep.
And name that emotion. A is accepting that emotion.
And yes, accept it. Yep. And then
And M is managing it.
Right. And you have thoughts and actions. So we make that distinction. What are some thought actions? Or you have what are thought strategies? What are action strategies? And then you have E to express it. Maybe it's just expressing it to yourself. I write it in my journal. Or I choose to express it. Then you have to be very selective. If you express it, is that person even going to hear you? Because you could end up feeling more injured if they don't hear you. And then how do you express it? So notice and name, accept, manage, and then express.
Excellent. So when you were explaining the distinction between emotional intelligence and emotional brilliance, I think most people on this call, I don't know if they are, let's explain more about emotional intelligence, and so they can have the understanding of the distinction between emotional intelligence and emotional brilliance.
Yep. Okay, great. So emotional intelligence, as you know so well, really got popularized by Daniel Goleman. It really started in 1990 by two psychologists who coined the term, Peter Salovey and Jack Mayer. And Goleman wrote the book Emotional Intelligence. And what I like about that is it's really about what are top people in the organization. A lot of the research came from what is someone who's in the top 10% doing differently than someone who's average. I mean, who doesn't want to be in the top 10% if we know it? And so from a research standpoint, it really happened from this consulting group, Hay Group, that did a lot of research in organizations. What are the top people doing? Kind of your good to great model. What are the great people doing that's different than the good? And Goleman kind of took some of that research and came up with these competencies. So understanding yourself are things like emotional self-awareness, which we're talking about, and notice and name, confidence, making accurate assessments of yourself, and then managing yourself, things like adaptability, impulse control. And then what do you know about others? Awareness of others, empathy. What about the organizational situation? And then how do you manage others? That's where a lot of our leadership comes in, teamwork and collaboration, communication. So there's competencies, depending on the model you use. You and I have used the EQI, which has 15 competencies. So these are all things that people who excel do. You don't have to do all of them, but in your situation, your position at home, position at work, which are the most important? Like, for example, someone who's in a sales organization probably doesn't need to be great at developing others. They may need to be great at teamwork, but if they're working by themselves, if they're on a team and they're leading others, of course they got to be great at developing others. So that's that idea of there's all these competencies, but it's almost like in a challenge, what do you pick? What do you select? I love this word. What do you summon? So there's two aspects. What do you summon? Okay, I got to summon my courage. And from Brene Brown, for example, her example, to get to courage, you have to walk through vulnerability, and so how do I get my courage to be vulnerable? Okay, so that would be a go-to, courage in a certain situation. For somebody else, and I know you and I've talked about this, and it's true for others, for someone else, it's love, compassion. In spite of all the chaos that's going on, my go-to is centering myself, and maybe it's love and compassion. In this COVID time, one of the leaders I worked with, their go-to was, I don't want to let anybody down. It was kind of
Yes.
responsibility. Everybody's counting on me, and that crystallized them. It's like an athlete of what do you have to do to ready yourself for the big sporting event? Well, our sporting event is right now the COVID challenge. What do you need to ready yourself? How do you prepare yourself so that it's what you do in those couple moments before you actually do it? Maybe it's deep breathing. Maybe it's really centering yourself. So it could be really different for each person.
Mhm. So I really like the concept of when you were talking about summoning those emotions, like
Right.
and it's a very interesting novel. And it talks about how much we are in control. So how
Mm,
much we are in control when we want to, when we decide and take the responsibility of
right.
doing something about it, because uh, many people think that they don't have the control. We are living
Yes.
in times of real crisis between health and economy and loss of jobs, and really it's everything is up in the air. And so our go-to that we want to summon is really up to us in these times,
Yeah.
because if our go-to is going to be anxiety, then we are going to be hijacked,
Yeah.
as you have explained.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
uh,
I think. I think. I'm just looks like it's. So I think that's a great way to say it, Zaina. It's that gap, but and you know this between stimulus and response.
in
So
response.
we don't have a if we don't have a gap, we know what our response is going to be: high anxiety. I mean, for all the right reasons. If we can take that gap, and this is where mindfulness comes in, this is where that gap can be 10 seconds, 20 seconds. And how do I bring my best self? That's going to be one of the questions, let's say on the M, in managing yourself. Okay, so what do I need to do? In my go-to, how do I bring my best self right now? And one of the tools, because I want to make sure your audience has some tools, you and I know this, is in that gap. One of the tools that we have in my book, we'll have in the new one, is the emotional audit, and it's just
Mhm.
in those 10 seconds, 20 seconds, you ask 5 questions, and the first question is, what am I thinking? And it could be, oh my God, what about my family? What about what about so and so who just came into my house? Were they clean? Did they wash their hands? Okay, it's going to happen fast. What am I feeling? I'm anxious. Uh, I'm concerned. What do I want? And so those first 2 are going to be information about the person. Most situations will stimulate similar thinking. It'll stimulate similar feelings. We'll say COVID for general. It's probably same kind of thinking, the same 2 or 3, and the same 2 or 3 feelings: anxiety, concern. What do I want? Now, this is more of a prefrontal cortex question, goal oriented. What do I want? I want to be safe. I want my family to be safe. How am I getting in my way? That's the 4th question. So that's the critical linchpin. How am I getting in my way? Well, I'm not slowing down. I'm raising my voice. I'm acting on my fear. That's the naming. How am I getting in my way? If you can name and notice what's going on for you, the 5th question is the corrective action. And all this can happen in 10 seconds. Okay, so how am I getting in my way? I'm getting myself all upset. I'm raising my voice. I'm not thinking straight. Okay, well, what do I need to do to be my best self? What do I need to do to be my best self? I need to take some deep breaths. I need to maybe do a quick little walk. I need to ask questions. I need to summon my go-to, because maybe I forgot that in the heat of the moment. My go-to
Mhm.
passion. My go-to is love. My go-to is empathy. Oh, I had that in the background. I need to summon that, and within 10 or 20 seconds, you can kind of do that self-correction and then say, okay, I got my best self, let's go. And so I think some of this that I know you do and I do is just slowing down, breathing, being aware of your thoughts. The 5 emotional audit questions allows you to slow down what's already happening, but slow down so you can make a corrective action and manage that.
Okay. That's wonderful. So we already gave them 2 tools till now, but I'm going to hit you with a harder question.
Okay, good.
And we are living in, I think, in the States and in Europe and everywhere around. There is this craze that's happening. That is, things are collapsing. Okay, but there is a sense of hopelessness also that is arising in many environments. In your case, in the United States, and it is in the more aggressive areas where there is a higher toll of death, and where the healthcare providers are. We've been hearing about new suicides, and so there is this sense of hopelessness in people, especially that they don't know what's coming ahead.
Mm-hmm.
And economically, financially, they are reaching to a place that is really devastating. So we have it even harder in Lebanon. But maybe I'm asking this question to you as a doctor in psychology more than our topic, because I have been addressed with these questions a lot these days. That what could they linger on to so they can keep moving? And then I will start answering questions. I have a couple of questions.
Yeah. So good question. What can they linger on? What can they kind of hold on? That sense of security. A big part of that is first it kind of acknowledging what is, so it may be some of the suffering, and acknowledging the suffering. That's part of the accepting. I think we want to kind of push that away. And so that's the part of kind of suffering, really being with somebody. Maybe it's your family, maybe it's a coworker. If we think about what do we have control of and what don't we have, you're familiar with I think Stephen Covey popularized the circle of influence. You have concerns, you have influence, you have focus. We all have the same concern. That's what we talked about. It's our safety, our needs. Am I going to be able to, provide for my family? And so that's real. And can we be heartfelt with someone? That's a lot of suffering there. And so that's that emotional domain around the helplessness, like you're saying. And then if we can get them to have 1 or 2 things that they can influence, like you mentioned, the suicide in New York City, and as a psychologist studying suicidology, most people don't want to kill themselves. What they don't, so the concerns are so big, they don't have one other option. And in suicidology, a lot of times it's trying to give the person at least one option. Could you call the help desk? Could you talk to your significant other? Because right now, it's like I have blinders on. They can't see anything. And I think from the installation of hope, which that one of the key things we try to do as a coach is installation of hope, and it's the relationship, the 2 curative factors, the relationship, installation of hope. So from the circle of concern, can we gradually move them when they're ready into the circle of influence? And the circle of influence would be maybe you have your health, you have the love of your family. Have you been able to express that? Maybe your influence is maybe there's a telephone call to a colleague. You're reaching out to others. You're giving to others. That sense of service, I know that's important for you. Those things feel like you have a little more control of your environment. And, you know, I think when you think about this, you're familiar, this is the times that man search for meaning, you know, and that,
Yes.
um, that the whole idea of having choice, you know, and you think about the concentration camp uh, that he was in, and he had that piece of bread, and you kind of think about our times now. He had a piece of bread, and what we have is choice. And Viktor Frankl, and Viktor Frankl said, "Well, I have this piece of bread. I could eat it all right now, or, you know, I could divide it in fours. Yeah, I'll have
Mm-hmm.
one in the morning. I'll have one at lunchtime. I'll have one at dinner time. You know, then I have another piece. I have another quarter piece of bread. Who could I give that to? So and so is having a really hard time, or maybe so and so. You know, in the most horrible situations, what he said. You know, and most of us have our health. You know, unless you got COVID, we have choice, and so that's going from the circle of concern into influence, and then the focus in this situation would be him deciding who should I give this little piece of bread to, or who can I give some of my compassion to for us, or what can I do that's going to help my children, or what can I do that's going to say something to a coworker that may lift them up even temporarily for the next 15 minutes. So trying to be realistic, we know this is challenging times, but getting those little pieces of hope, maybe that's the way of saying it. Yes, there's a lot of things to be hopeless about. What are some pieces of hope that we can hang on to and share?
That's so beautiful, beautifully said. Choice. So other than the tools that we have given them today in terms of name and the emotional audit, having this answer as we have a choice, and we can take a decision on what to do with it if we can emotionally control ourselves and not spiral into a place of unknown. We have a question from Nisreen. Let me get it back. I lost the question, I think. 1 second. How about some tips for professionals in understanding and bridging towards colleagues?
Yeah. So I think it's applying some of what we talked about with colleagues is truly connecting with them, you know, around empathy and really asking them, you know, that connecting. So what's, you know, how are you doing? You know, and trying to be real. You know, a lot of people put on a face, you know, at work, but tell me how you're doing. And I think as colleagues, we probably have to continue to ask questions and better questions, not just, well, how you doing? You know, tell me how you're doing. Tell me what's going on. What's, you know, how's your family? What's going on with your husband? What, you know, what's some of your biggest concerns? Sometimes just that sense of commonality that we have as humans to really hear their, maybe hear or share their suffering. So maybe that's what we really, another way of saying it, because I know especially there in Lebanon, you know, there's a lot of suffering, and it's almost like putting your arm around them and say, you know, tell me how it's going. Let me share some suffering with you, you know. And I think that's some of that definition of the word compassion, is really share some of that with a colleague, and you kind of let them talk. And I think as we talk, one, they feel heard. And again, if you can reflect back like you're doing with me, that professionals do, it sounds like this is a really scary time for you. Just let, and if it's heartfelt, they go, yeah, they will say more. So if you connect with their heart, their mouth will open up and more things will come out. So I think that empathy of really understanding kind of what they're feeling kind of what they're feeling, and then that sense of compassion, trying to relieve some of that suffering, you know. And those are kind of steps of empathy that Paul Ekman talks about, you know. So noticing what they're feeling, um, and then, you know, probably feeling something similar, and then trying to help relieve a little suffering. So what are you, and maybe what are you going to do about that? What's your next step? What do you think is going to help? Is there any way I could help? So give them that next step, like we were talking about with suicidology.
Great. So I'd like to add on this piece a bit because people also live in times of a lot of negative energy that we're all going through. So I have to add here that this kind of compassion and connection will actually boost you as a human being in terms of the neurohormones that we have. And the oxytocin will rise, the dopa will rise. It's just this connection that you give to your colleague will help you. It will not deflate you because people could be afraid also
Right.
of getting too much negative energy in nagging,
Yeah.
and they don't know how to handle that or how to
Right.
filter all of that
Right.
because there's a lot of it going on. So maybe a couple of people, and just be careful of compassion fatigue also, not going and doing it. That I think that is also something
Yeah.
that we can focus on.
Yep.
Hamad is asking, is it correct that there are three levels concerning the activity of the coronavirus? Muhammad, in this conversation, I don't know if Relly can answer it, but we're talking more about emotional intelligence, compassion, empathy, and otherwise. I don't know if you can answer him though.
Yeah, I don't know if that was what I said in the very beginning because I mentioned three levels of threat. This comes
Mhm.
from neuroscience. Levels of threat to the environment, and I'm not sure this is what he's referring to, but levels of threat to the environment. It's kind of out there. Okay, it's out there. It's not so close. In my neighborhood, gets closer, and
Mhm.
then to me and my family, and that level is where you're going to get to use our term hijack the most. And we all, and matter of fact, so we're all at that level because we're all concerned for ourselves and our family, and therefore, in a simple way of saying, we're not thinking that clearly because we're emotionally loaded. So our
Mhm.
cognitive ability is less. So if we don't attend to the emotions, we're not going to be as smart. And you think about one definition of emotional intelligence as being smart about your emotions. So one way to be smart about your emotions is to attend to them, talk about them, and then when you're ready, I think your IQ, like we talked about that, sometimes if you're emotionally overloaded, you're working with less IQ points. Nobody wants to hear
Mhm.
that. As a psychologist, I've given IQ tests, and if someone is hijacked, they may be high average IQ, 115 and above. And if they're hijacked and really frantic about stuff, now their IQ temporarily is under 100. They've lost a standard deviation of their ability to think straight. Sometimes that's called the cognitive load. There's so much going on, I can't think straight. Well, at that moment, you're operating with less IQ points. How to get back those IQ points is to name it. Yeah, I'm really anxious now. And then to kind of normalize it. Yeah, of course, I'd be anxious. Everybody be anxious. Okay. And then I think the emotional audit helps going back to what do I want? Well, what is it that I really want? I want to leave my anxiety. Is there any way I'm getting in my way? Yeah, I'm just sitting here worrying. Oh, okay. Well, that's probably not working. What should I do? Maybe I'm going to reach out to my friend. Maybe I'm going to go for a walk. Maybe I'm going to pray. Maybe I'm going to go meditate. Maybe you're saying, Zeina, I'm going to help a friend and release some of that oxytocin because that's going to make me feel better. I'm going to do something to help someone else. All those things are going to help versus you have to know where you're at and where you're stuck to get out of that.
Mhm.
So let me just mention
That's
one other. I would just mention one other thing. This idea of mindfulness and awareness. And awareness equals responsibility. And if you break up the word responsibility, it means ability to respond. So
yes.
if you're not aware of what's going on, which is some of the mindfulness, some of the naming your emotions, you're not able to get in that gap and respond. You have no ability to respond because you're not aware of what's going on.
So as a summary, I think we have exceeded our time limit and you have something else to go to. Just go back to the tool in the Emotional Brilliance book
Okay.
that's coming up. Name, notice, accept, manage, and experience emotions.
The E
And
is
E
so
is
the E
what?
is expressed.
Express,
Express it.
sorry.
Yeah.
Express the emotion, yes. And follow up on the emotional audit tool
Yeah.
that has been also explained by Dr. Nadler.
So
You have a choice,
so
and
it looks like it's paused. So the
go ahead.
emotional audit. I'm sorry. Yeah, look, I was paused for a minute. So the emotional audit is mindful. What am I thinking? And you pause. What am I feeling? And you kind of do a body sense. What am I feeling? What do I want? Each one of these, if you pause for 3 or 4 seconds, you're going to get an answer. What do I want? I want to feel not so nervous. Okay. How am I getting in my way? I'm just sitting here ruminating over and over. Oh, that's not working. Well, what should I do differently? And one thing I'll leave you with from neuroscience, if you ruminate, because I use that word, worry, 5 to 10. I mean, many of us are ruminating all day long. 5 to 10 minutes. First, it starts to eat away at your memory, cognitively, but it also eats away at our impulse control. And that goes back to getting hijacked. So if you're ruminating and not acting, you're not getting into the circle of influence and focus, you're basically losing IQ points and you're not going to be as good in what you want to be doing.
And that we have a choice, and we are responsible for our own awareness, and
Yes.
we need to be mindful and practice this mindfulness on a daily basis, and reach out to people that can help and serve. I want to thank you, Relly, for your time and for your service. And I want to thank everyone who has joined us today. I hope this was of benefit to all of you. And I see you definitely next week with a very interesting medical topic that will be targeting also COVID-19. Thank you, Dr. Nadler, and see you soon.
Thank you. Thanks to your audience. Bye-bye.